So hi everyone. Oh boy, I can't believe we got these chairs in here. It's so good to see you and welcome. Tonight we have a very special presentation with Jason Schulman.
Shurka. Almost.
And he is, of course, the founder of Unifyd Healing. And he is going to do a Q&A and a presentation this evening. But he's an author, entrepreneur, a mover, and a shaker. So if you really want to know the truth, Jason's going to give it.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the both of you. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause because they really made this whole thing happen. So I want to say thank you to you guys for opening this center and making this possible. Thank you guys very much. And I hope to see more and more people become more and more aware of it. And that's my job. That's what I'm here for.
And we're with you.
All around the world. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you that are in here. Whether you understand all of this or not, I promise you after this presentation, you will understand it to a much higher extent or a higher degree, if you will. And that's really the purpose of that whole thing of explaining it in a way, explaining it in a way where more people can understand it. So next time somebody comes to you and says, what is this? You know, what are these screens? How does it work? Does it really work? How do you know? You guys can actually provide science behind it. And the science is not as complex as one may think it is. It seems complex when you use the big words of quantum physics and scalar energy and all that, but there are simpler ways to understand this whole thing. So the first thing we're going to do here today is I'm going to give a long-winded but short summarized explanation of what this technology is. How does it work on the level of science and always? And from there, we'll go into questions and just allow it to flourish and extend to wherever it goes. So how does the EE system, how does the energy enhancement system actually work? There are 5 foundations that we first need to be aware of in order to understand what I'm about to explain when it comes to this technology. Foundation number 1, which is the most important, is your environment. Environment. Your environment, simply put, is the most important thing there is, because your environment is what you sync to. So I'm going to give you examples to ground that idea into something that we can all understand. If I were to hug you for long enough, our heartbeats would synchronize. When women spend enough time together, their menstrual cycles synchronize. That's a fact of science. We know that the menstrual cycle is not something that's contagious. You're not giving it from one person to the next. A woman doesn't give it from her to another. So there's something going on here beyond passing something. Say it again?
Like to give it this way.
So there's something bigger going on here beyond this illusion of contagion, let's say. Passing it physically from one person to the next. And we know that by the synchronization of menstrual cycles when women are spending time together. So what is that thing? That thing is called the 100th monkey effect. The 100th monkey effect, basically explained through animals and nature. We can't explain it anymore through human beings so much in a direct way because we have communication technology to communicate. But if there are 100 monkeys on this island, and 100 monkeys on this island, this is something you guys can look up to understand it fundamentally and understand that this is not something made up. This is science, and they're now coming to understand how this works. So I'm going to explain how it works simplistically. Let's say one monkey on this island starts doing something. All the other monkeys will, over a period of time, start following. And now you have a whole population of monkeys on island 1 that are now doing the same exact thing. But that's obvious because we could see that one monkey saw the other monkey and they started following suit. But then there's something weird that happens. These monkeys never met these monkeys. And yet, when these monkeys start doing what they're doing, all these monkeys start doing the same exact thing. So what's going on? And what's going on is very simple. There's a bioresonant field of energy, of consciousness, of awareness, of all these things that we sync to. That's how the menstrual cycle doesn't pass, but we're all syncing, all the women are syncing to the same thing, and therefore experience the same expression of an experience. In 1918, when the Spanish flu was passing all around the world, if you look at the actual science and you look at the actual history, the Spanish flu moved faster than the people moved at the time. It moved to places before people could even get to those places to pass it, because of that bioresonant field. So your bioresonant field is something that encompasses many different things that we sync to. Foundation number one is your environment. If you are in a sick environment, an incoherent environment, a distorted environment, your body and its bioresonant field will sync to that bioresonant field, and you will take on sickness and distortion and incoherence. If that bioresonant field, if your environment is healthy and balanced and coherent, then your body will take on that bioresonant field. Your body will sync to health as opposed to disease. So your environment dictates what you experience in the environment of your body. Again, put yourself in a sick one, you will experience sickness. Put yourself in a healthy one, you will experience health. The problem in the world today is that the environment that we've created for ourselves is distorted. It has dirty electricity. It has harmful EMFs and harmful radiation. EMFs are not a bad thing. You radiate them all the time. We are an electromagnetic field. The question is, the technologies that we're using, the things that we're using in the world today, are they coherent with creation? Are they in alignment with creation, or are they not? And because we've forgotten this, we've created an environment that then allows us to sync to one that isn't coherent, which then renders sickness as opposed to health. Foundation number two is called the law of conservation. Everything that I'm sharing here with you today is not an opinion, it's not a belief, it's absolute science from the facts of the scientists themselves. I'm just showing you a way to look at it differently. The law of conservation, you all learned when you were about 12 or 13 years old in middle school. They taught it to us and then we forgot it. The law of conservation states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, that implies that there's no beginning or end. When you have something without a beginning or end, what does that imply? Infinity. There is an infinite realm, an infinite energetic source of something that we have to figure out a way to tap into. And this technology is part of tapping into that infinite source, which I'll explain in just a second. The last three foundations are basically the same exact thing, expressed in different ways. Number one is cellular charge. Number two is pH, otherwise known as the potential of hydrogen, or hydrogen potential of your body. And number three, or the fifth foundation, would be oxygen levels. This, and this all lead towards the same thing and do the same thing, expressed in different ways. I'll explain what that means. Health does not exist outside of you. Health is your natural state of being. How do we know that without just believing what I just said? What is everything in nature always trying to do by fact, by law? It's always trying to come back into balance. It's always trying to come back into homeostasis. Everything, always. That's how nature works. If you were to cut your hand over here, cut your arm, you could be asleep, you could be awake, you could be in a coma. That will end up healing itself, whether you like it or not, because that's the natural state of the body. The body is always trying to heal itself. If you give it the proper environment to do so, it will do that quicker. If you put it in a sick environment, it will slow down that process. And if you put it in a healthy environment, it will catalyze that process. So the cellular charge is the electrical charge of your cells. Again, health starts within not just the body, but within your cells. The way that that works is on a spectrum of what we call millivolts, MV for short. 70 to 90 millivolts, an electrical charge of 70 to 90 millivolts in your cells is where optimal health resides. And anywhere going in this direction, specifically 20 and below, is where you have cancer and disease. Sorry for my handwriting, it's a little tough. But cancer and disease exists at 20 millivolts and below. So for so long, we've been asking, how do we fight the cancer? How do we get away from these dangerous diseases? and there's an inverted way of understanding this when you understand what I'm explaining here. It's no longer fighting cancer. It's simply changing the environment of your body or of your cells so cancer can no longer exist. So disease can no longer exist, making it an environment that disease cannot flourish in the first place. So a low millivoltage in your cells is an environment where disease can be hosted. A high millivoltage in your cells, specifically 70 to 90 millivolts, is an environment where disease cannot be hosted, and health is the only thing left because that is the natural state and balance and harmony of absolutely everything. So instead of saying, how do I get rid of this cancer? How do I get rid of this disease? How do I not get this X, Y, or Z? The question should be, how do I charge my cells? Because if you have a cellular charge of 70 to 90 millivolts, nothing will be able to flourish in you that is undesirable. This system, which I'll explain in a second, partially charges your cells. It's a cellular charger, which I'll explain in a second when I explain the in-depth technology behind what you're actually looking at over here instead of just seeing screens with movement, light, and a computer behind it. That's number one. Number two is your pH. We all know that there's a spectrum of pH as well. Neutral is about 7, 7.2. We'll call it 7 for practical purposes. Anywhere down here is acidic, and anywhere up here is alkaline. Back to this one. Low cellular charge disease, high cellular charge health. Low pH disease, high pH health. You take any cancer patient, any patient experiencing any disease, and check their pH, and you will see that it is more on the acidic side. Simply change the pH, shift it from acidic to alkaline, and those diseases will have no home anymore. You have to change the conditions so those diseases can no longer exist. So again, low cellular charge and pH are both the same thing expressed differently. If you have a high cellular charge, you will have a more alkaline pH. If you have a low pH, you will have a low cellular charge. Same thing expressed in different ways. And the last point over here of the 5 foundations before we understand this technology is oxygen levels. In the 18 or 1900s, there was a doctor named Dr. Otto Warburg. Dr. Otto Warburg, I forget the date that he won the Nobel Prize for this, but Dr. Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for proving deprive a single cell of 35% of its oxygen for 48 hours, and that cell will turn cancerous. That means that on the spectrum of oxygen, low deficient oxygen environments will render disease, and oxygen-rich environments will render health, because you cannot have cancer in a place that is oxygen-rich. You cannot have imbalance or disease that is in an environment that is oxygen-rich or oxygenated. So let's recap for a second. All of these are 3 different mediums, 3 different ways to get to the same thing, either disease or health. Low cellular charge, disease, high cellular charge, health. Low pH disease, high pH health. Low oxygen levels disease, and high oxygen levels health. If you don't know how to do anything with pH and oxygen levels, charge your cells, it will take care of this and this. If you don't know how to do anything with pH and cellular charge, pay attention to your oxygen levels and it will take care of this and this. And if you don't know how to take care of oxygen levels and cellular charge, take care of pH and it will take care of this and this, because one reflects the other. It's all the same exact thing expressed in a different way. So let's recap. Environment. The environment that you're in is what you will sink to. A dirty environment, a toxic environment renders disease. A healthy environment renders health. The law of conservation, energy cannot be created or destroyed. There is an infinite source of energy by law. Scientific, one of the main foundational laws of science that we need to tap into. How do we do it? We'll speak about that in just a second. And then we just spoke about cellular charge, pH, and oxygen levels. Now, we're going to go to number 2. The law of conservation. If we can tap into this source, we have something called free energy. We have something called health. But that's a threat to certain people in power. Because when Nikola Tesla came out with explaining and figuring out how to tap into the implications of the law of conservation, what happened? He was killed. Why? Because free energy is a great thing for the world as a whole, but it's a horrible thing for the people that run it. Because the people who run it want to meter your use of electricity, want to meter your use of energy, want to meter something that's free in the first place, and that's a crime against humanity. But because people aren't aware of what's being said over here in these foundational laws, it's just become normal. But electricity is not something that costs money if you know how to tap into it the right way. Again, they don't want us to know that because there are big businesses, $1 trillion of industries that are based on that. Health is not something that exists in a pill. Health is something that exists within you. It's not about finding it outside of yourself. It's about finding it within yourself, returning to your birthright, to the energetic field that taps into what the law of conservation is actually trying to tell us. And that is energy cannot be created or destroyed. So what does that actually look like? If there's an infinite field, an infinite source of energy, how do we tap into it? And if we had to graph what that infinite field or infinite flow of energy looks like, there's a base energetic field that exists and is inherent in absolutely everything. And we call that a torsion field. A torsion field is a flow of energy in all directions, always, all the time, with no beginning and no end. So it looks like this. Your torsion field is the basis of all creation as we know it. Anywhere from the birthright of the energetic field of your heart, to the base energetic field of your body, to the energetic field of an apple, to a carrot, to a plum, to an apricot, to a peach, to a tree, all the way to planet Earth as we know it. Planet Earth has a torsion field operating around it. That is the flow of energy and how it moves. Your torsion field is a perfect, balanced field of energy with no beginning, no end, and infinite flow. That's what the law of conservation actually creates. That's what the law of conservation looks like as an energetic field. There's a movie called Thrive, came out in 2012 with Foster Gamble. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It explains with proof how the torsion field, otherwise known as the toroidal field, is inherent in absolutely all of creation as we know it. And once we understand this field, there is no duality in this field. It's infinite. It's not this and that. It's just this. So in this field, in the base of all creation, we know that there is no disease and health, because creation is always trying to do one thing, not two, and that's balance itself. We know that because look at the body and how it works. It always tries to heal itself. It always tries to come back into a state of harmony, balance, and homeostasis. So how do we recreate this field, and why is that important? It's important because of foundation number one, the environment. If you sit in an environment that is toxic, dirty, and incoherent, you will take on that field. And if you sit in an environment that is balanced, coherent, infinite, and according to the laws of creation, aka toroidal field, you will sink to that bioresonant field, and your body will reclaim its birthright of health as opposed to disease. Now that brings us to this technology as a whole and how it works. There are two parts to this technology. If you're looking at it from the side, you're going to see a black box, and you're going to see a monitor in front of that black box. We'll call it 1, the black box, and 2, the monitor. This part is what we're going to start with. You know when people say scalar energy, scalar technology, nobody actually knows what they're talking about. Not the normal person, at least. So I want to explain what that means from a grounded perspective of what scalar truly means, as opposed to just using it and saying it's scalar technology. Because if you understand what it means and you can make sense of it, then suddenly it becomes available and accessible to the awareness of the common person. And then the power comes back into where it truly is, which is in the people. Instead of having to trust what somebody says, you can know if something is true or not based on your discernment. But to use discernment, you need to know the laws. So this, otherwise known as this part of the technology, is what Dr. Michael calls an engine field generator. An engine field generator is a generator that produces electromagnetic fields. In this case, coherent electromagnetic fields. And in this case, if you pay attention to what that black box technology is, it's using, to an extent, a computer and certain components to create an electromagnetic field. Now the question is, how do we tap into your torsion field? How do you create a torsion field. I'll get to that in just a second once we explain a spectrum. This represents the speed of light. This is 0. This is 186,000 miles per second, which is the speed of light. And this is everything that people call quantum. Quantum, simply put, is another word for nobody knows what the hell is going on, because it doesn't actually fit the laws of physics that we understand. Quantum means everywhere, all the time, simultaneously, instantaneously. That's what quantum entanglement is. It's something that surpasses the speed of light and does instantaneous stuff no matter the distance. And that's weird to science because we can't measure it. That's why they're not comfortable with it yet, but they have no choice but to go there because it's what's going on. So before we get to this electromagnetic field, and I'll explain how to create a torsion field and how this creates a torsion field, this, beyond the speed of light, is called scalar. The opposite of scalar, within the confines of reality as we know it, is called vector. You don't have to remember that because I'm going to give you easier words. This, in spiritual terms, is called 5D. This, in our terms, is called 3D. This is called non-physical. Some people can call that spiritual, but that's a trigger word for some people, so we're going to use non-physical, something that is not tangible within the realm of 0 to 186,000 miles per second. And this is material. So up until now, we've been taught that even in the holistic communities, holistic health only takes this entire field, because reductionism and reductionistic health, which is big pharma, only takes in certain portions of this spectrum and pays attention to one without seeing the other. A more expansive version is the holistic community that takes the whole spectrum of our reality into consideration. We call that holistic medicine. But that's not holistic medicine. Holistic medicine, holistic healing is not just taking from here to here. Holistic medicine, holistic healing is from taking from here to here, and this represents infinity. So we need to take in the entire spectrum into account when understanding what holistic health really looks like and what holistic health truly is. That means that it's not enough just to balance the vector, the 3D, or the material side. You have to balance this side and this side. And if you balance both sides, you'll understand that this is just a limitation of our perception called the speed of light. And when you take that limitation out, this becomes one spectrum again. So of course, you would want to balance the whole spectrum simultaneously, because that's what true holistic health is. So we're going to go piece by piece, starting with this side for practical purposes, and then we're going to go to this side. Because this black box technology represents this side, and this monitor represents this side. And each side represents and is intended to balance each side to create balance as a whole. True holistic healing comes from balance as a whole. So how do we create a torsion field? Because a torsion field is balance in your scalar field, which is the basis of all material and matter. The way that you do it is very simple. If you can create two identical, and this is the science behind it, two identical electromagnetic fields, and you align them precisely, the merging point will create a torsion field. When you bring in more than 2 points, let's take a few points, 4 points, and each one of these represent identical electromagnetic fields, because each one of those boxes are identical to like the most minute levels. You're then creating multiple, and I'm using 4 right now, multiple electromagnetic fields to create a merge of an even more stable electromagnetic field, of an even more stable torsion field in this case. Another way to understand that in simple terms that everybody will be able to understand is using the medium of water. Let's start with cars. If you have 2 cars, identical models, identical everything, and both cars are traveling at identical speeds with identical acceleration, and they weigh the same exact amount and they're precisely aligned to hit each other. When they hit each other, those cars will not go that way or that way. They will come to a perfect standstill, so long as they're identical and hit each other with precise alignment. That's physics, that's a fact. Let's do that with water for a second. You take two hoses, hose number 1, hose number 2, identical width, identical water pressure, and identical and precise alignment. And you hit that water, or both hoses, to hit each other. What is going to happen with the water? You're going to have one stream going straight up and one stream going straight down. Now let's add more points. When you now have 4 hoses, precise alignment, precise everything to the most minute detail of it being equal and perfectly aligned, you're now going to have that water hitting itself from all those angles, and you're going to have water going up, down, left, and right. And if you were to take out the factor of gravity, which water is impacted by, that water would then turn into a torsion field. Why do I say take out the factor of gravity? Because that's what these screens are doing, only instead of using water, it's using light. And gravity doesn't impact light. Light is not affected or impacted by matter in the same way that water or matter would be. So what you're experiencing in this room right now is a torsion field of light that's happening at the very, very center of this room. With the torsion field, which operates on the scalar side of the equation, beyond the speed of light, you're now balancing everything in that dimension of reality, which we're still a part of. We just don't experience ourselves through. But we're still very much a part of, because energy cannot be created or destroyed. And you, as matter, are also that energy. So when you're now creating that torsion field in the middle of this room, what happens when we remember foundation 1 of the environment? You're now sinking to an environment that is balanced, perfect, whole, and infinite in its essence. Your body will take on that torsion field, because your body is that torsion field, and it will return back to its birthright. And I say back to its birthright because this is not healing you. You are healing you. You just need the environment to catalyze the process of what the body's always trying to do, which is heal itself. So the scalar field, the torsion field, is part 1 of what we drew earlier, which is right over here, scalar, on the spectrum of 0 to infinity, taking care of the field that we call the scalar field beyond the speed of light, and thus balancing this part of the equation. Now that torsion field that this system is actually creating goes out 2.2 miles in radius. But it's not 2.2 miles just left and right. What we understood from the water and how the torsion field works is that it's left, right, up, and down. It's a sphere that's a 4.4 mile diameter of a torsion field that this impacts. So some people will say, okay, then I don't actually need to come to this center. I could be 2 miles away and still experience it. That's true, and it's not true. Because the only thing you're going to experience is balance here, which is a very big part of the equation. But we still need to balance the matrix part of it, the reality part of it. And the way the matrix works is now we're going to expand this from 0 to the speed of light. We experience our reality from here to here. Everything non-physical, the things we can't explain, things having to do with dreams, things having to do with things that are just so out there that we can't measure yet because we don't understand them, that's in this part of the spectrum. But we've already balanced this, so how do we balance this part of the spectrum? Number 1, we have to understand how it works. So rule number 1 is it's from 0 to the speed of light. From there, the reason why that's important is because we, as physical human beings right now, with our experience within this matrix, need to use the matrix to our benefit, not escape it. We need to understand it in such a way that we master it instead of becoming slaves to it. So what you're looking at on the screens is using light within the spectrum of 0 to 186,000 miles per second to impact the body on a physical level to rebalance this part of the spectrum. And the monitors and what they do, simplistically speaking, are broken up into 4 parts. Part number 1 is called the Schumann's resonance. The Schumann's resonance is 7.83 hertz at its base. It's the Earth's heartbeat, basically. That's why when you walk barefoot on planet Earth with grass or dirt, it's healing, because there's a charge to the planet and there's a charge to you. And we're electrical beings, so when you give it the proper charge, it causes for the body to come back into balance with creation, as we know it, as opposed to distorted fields. The Schumann's resonance is one of the things that's being transmitted in the unit of hertz through these screens. The second is called the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is a set of numbers with ratios relative to those numbers, which I'll explain in a second, that they call the golden ratio, the golden mean. And that sequence of numbers is seen in absolutely everything in creation as we know it. It's seen from how embryos develop. It's seen from how cells multiply. It's even seen in what they call fractal mathematics, when flowers bloom, and the ratios of the petals to the petals around it and the center of the flower. The way that that actually works is a sequence of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 44. What is the relationship here? 1 plus 2 equals 3. 2 plus 3 equals 5. 3 plus 5 equals 8. 5 plus 8, 13. 8, 13, 21, 13, 21, 44, and it keeps going. If you were to take out a calculator and do the math, the ratio from here to here and here to here and here to here and here to here and here to here is the same. And that ratio is called your golden ratio or your golden mean. Meaning there's a set of numbers, there's a code to this universe and an order in how things works. And if we can return back to that code, we return back to the birthright of creation, which is balance and health, as opposed to disease and sickness. So the movement that you're seeing on the screens is operating according to the Fibonacci sequence in the unit of seconds. Meaning, if you were to stare at the screen long enough, you would see it start, instead of just the speed, you would see it going up, and then sometimes you'd see it going down. And if you stare at it for long enough, you'll see it when the program resets itself. It will go up for 1 second, down for 2, up for 3, down for 5, up for 8, down for 13, up for 21, down for 44, and so on and so forth, until it reaches the end of that program and it starts again. So the Fibonacci sequence is another thing that's being transmitted to each and every one of us through the light within the spectrum, the matrix of reality that we experience. The third of the four components of these screens, to simplify it, is called photonic collision. Photonic just means light. So forget about that word. We're going to go and call it collision of light. So if you pay attention, the screens are perfectly aligned. And how they're perfectly aligned is to 1/100th of an inch, laser calibrated. When these photons, aka light, when the light merges and hits itself in the center of the room, which is why they're all calibrated perfectly to a perfect center, something interesting happens. The photons, the light, hits each other, and you have a charge. You have an implosion of light that creates a charge. And that charge, back to cellular charge, is anywhere from 70 to 90 millivolts. Now let's go to the first foundation of the environment. If you're sitting in an environment that is charged to 40 millivolts, you'll probably experience sickness. If you're sitting in an environment that's charged from 70 to 90 millivolts, well then when you walk in with a 30, 25, 40 millivolt charge, just by the law of resonance and how things work, you will then be charged by the environment around you, because that's now what you're syncing to. So the collision of light, or photonic collision, is responsible for the charge of 70 to 90 millivolts that acts as a cellular charger to charge your cells and thus render your body able to create health as opposed to disease. And the fourth part is all about color. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water. Color is very, very interesting when we understand how it actually works. Most people, and it always baffles my mind how scientists don't get this, because they teach it without even understanding. We've already established, and now we're dealing with already this part of the spectrum right now. We've already dealt with this one. So over here, within the 0 to 186,000 miles per second, you have a spectrum of not just light, but color. That spectrum is measured in nanometers, which is your wavelengths. From 360 to 720 nanometers is the spectrum of light that we know with our own eyes. Some science will simplify it and call it 400 to 700, but this is a technicality. So 360 to 720 nanometers, what does that actually mean? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. That's what we learned when we were about 7 years old. And they made us sing a song all about Roy G. Biv. So Roy G. Biv is scientific. The difference between red and violet is a wavelength. It's an energy. It's a frequency. It's a resonance. It's a vibration. The reason why that's important is because older medicine, before the Western model took over, understood something that we've forgotten. And in many cases, some have suppressed. You know those diagrams of people sitting in like a meditation pose with the 7 chakras, the 7 energy centers? So Western medicine basically calls it, crazy, and it's not real. But here's what's actually going on. It just so happens to be in the same exact order, meaning 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, they understood this spectrum without the tools that we have today. So they must have known something that we didn't up until recently. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. What is a color? A color, as we now know, is just a wavelength expressed. It's an energy expressed. And when we perceive that energy, we perceive it as color. What it really is the wavelength. Is an energy, is a frequency, is a vibration. So when you start thinking, like Nikola Tesla told us to, when you start thinking in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, the way that you understand color changes. Because it's not just this beautiful thing in the rainbow. It ends up becoming a modality to help you heal yourself. Here's how we know that. If what I'm saying is true, then foods that are yellow would be good for your digestive system, which in Eastern medicine would be called your solar plexus. Foods that are green would be good for your heart, your cardiovascular system, and your pulmonary system, otherwise called the heart chakra. Foods that are red would be good for inflammation, would be good for blood disorders, would be good for anything in that realm. And it just so happens to be that mangoes and bananas and pineapples and lemons are good for your digestive system. And it just so happens to be that green juices, asparagus, artichoke, green foods, whole foods from this planet, from Earth, are good for your heart and help you clear mucus and phlegm from your lungs. And it just so happens to be that red foods, like cherries, are good for inflammation in the body. That's a fact. That's something that we know at this point. And it's not a coincidence. It's how things work. Because these colors are representing the optimal frequency, the optimal energy of each part of the body. So the optimal frequency of your cardiovascular system and your pulmonary system is an energy that we perceive when it's expressed as green. The optimal frequency of your digestive system is an energy that we perceive when expressed as yellow. That's what color really is, and so on and so forth. So if it can happen with food and we understand color in that way, then you may look at this and understand it in a whole different way. What is the prime function of DNA? Scientifically, the prime function of DNA as we know it is to store, it's for the storage of photons. That's the scientific way of saying it. The simple way of saying it is to store light, the storage of light. That's the purpose of DNA, the prime function of DNA. Give it coherent light, and it will express coherency. Give it distorted light, and it will express distortion. The light that you're seeing over here is tuned to its optimal frequency on that spectrum. to your optimal parts of whatever you're experiencing, the optimal frequencies of each of these energy centers that Western medicine just calls the cardiovascular system and the nervous system and so on and so forth. And just by using color, which now Western medicine is starting to use, called color therapy, because they have no choice. They're just trying to find a way to monetize it now. But they have no choice because the studies are showing this to be true. They use blue light, for example, to help with things like arthritis. They use red light to help with other parts of your body, especially when it comes to inflammation in the body, and so on and so forth. So what this is doing, back to what we said over here, is it's taking 4 separate parts within the matrix to help you balance your experience within the matrix. And by using the Schumann's resonance 7.83 hertz, by using the Fibonacci sequence, which we explained right here, by using photonic collision, which creates that charge of 70 to 90 millivolts, and by using color, which is an extremely important part, what happens next is we didn't just balance this side of it through the torsion field created by that merge of identical electromagnetic fields. We now also balanced this part, which is what we used to call holistic health. And when you balance both, that's what holistic health really is. Because at that point, you will have truly balanced every single part of who you are, which is infinite. Both from the 0 to the speed of light, up until the speed of light to infinity. Because the torsion field is not up to a certain point. It's an infinite field of energy. That's what you're sitting in here right now. That's what you're experiencing right now. And it's all about those 5 foundations, with the most focus having to be on the environment. Have a productive, balanced, and coherent environment, and your body will tune to that environment. It's balancing the environments here. It's balancing the environments here. And just like the menstrual cycle works when you tune to with multiple women experiencing the same expression of that synchronization, you will experience what your body is always trying to do, which is called health. It's always trying to heal itself. Give it the proper environment to do that, and you will experience health over disease. So that's the long-winded, summarized version of how to explain this technology. I'm happy to go into questions, and then I think we should speak about the protocols as well. Yes?
I first saw you on Mark Z's podcast, and I got
On whose?
Mark Z.
Mark Z.
Mark Z.
I don't even know who that is.
You were on a show.
Mark Z. Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe it was one of your representatives.
I don't know.
I first heard about the technology
Okay.
on his YouTube podcast.
Okay.
I got excited immediately because we were already using scalar wave, but it was remote, where you send a picture in. And I thought, wow, and I'm very sensitive, and I felt that.
You felt that happen because that's very valid, by the way, over here. Because you don't need distance. Distance is not a factor when it comes to scalar. Distance becomes a factor in this part.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, coming and bathing in it in person is going to do even more.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads me to another question. If you come for treatments, I got very excited that this center was going to be close by. And you go back to not coherent, incoherent environments, how long does it hold?
There's no direct answer to something like that, but I'm going to give you a larger understanding so you'll be able to answer that in it's not 1 + 1 = 2 on that, because you can't answer a question like that directly. What we could say is, how do you hold it for as long as possible?
Okay.
That's a different way of asking the question,
Right.
as opposed to how long does it hold? Because depending on what you do or don't do, that can last longer or shorter. Let's remember, the point over here is to return back to yourself. The truth of the matter is you are what this technology is producing. The reason why we use it is because it's helping us get back to that birthright. You'll know that we've succeeded when all of these centers no longer have anyone walking into them, because nobody will need them anymore. Now that's going to take a while to get to, because we have billions of people to go through.
100th monkey.
100th monkey, which is the next thing that I wanted to bring up, to go back to what we said. But with this idea of what you're seeing over here, this is reproducing who you really are. Now it can only do that to an extent, right? We're creating something as a stepping stone to get to where you need to get to again, to get to where we all were once in probably a very distant past before we did what we did. So ultimately, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how do we hold a torsion field and a balanced field of energy within ourselves? And when we hold a balanced field of energy within ourselves, here's what's going to happen. The only reason the environment looks the way that it does right now is because we've created that. We've created the ways and the networks of which the iPhones and the Androids work on. We've created the networks of the technology that we use. Imagine we had the awareness and the coherency to be able to create the same technology, only not in a distorted form, but in a coherent form. Because there's no problems with computers if used in the right way. Look at these. You're using technology to produce coherence because the inventor, in this case, had the awareness of those laws. If we have enough people that can step into the awareness of these laws, then you're not going to have technology that's incoherent anymore. That doesn't mean we return back to caveman days. It means that as we receive those higher levels of awareness and step into them and embody them, the things that we produce and the way that we produce those things will change. So it's a process that kind of feeds itself and follows itself. Meaning, the more people who could step into coherency, the more people who could return back to that toroidal field for as much as they can, almost like the present moment. If you read Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, it starts as a second, right? The present moment you tune into for a second. And the more you practice, that second turns to 10 seconds, and that 10 seconds turns to 100 seconds, and the 100 seconds turns to 10 minutes, and the 10 minutes turns to an hour until the present moment becomes your predominant state. So the key is to make not the present moment in this case, maybe also, but in this case to create and make balance your predominant state as an individual, because what happens with the 100th monkey effect? Just like it can pass on negative things, it can pass on positive things. A lot of people say, how do we actually get to a point where we don't need to depend on anything outside of us ever again? And the answer is very simple. It's two-pronged. Way number one is you teach people, but there's a more powerful way than teaching people. And the more powerful way than teaching people is embodying the understanding of the basic laws of creation as we know it. Because as you embody that, and you just know that, you won't even have to teach that to others. It will start coming to others as inspiration, because you've just added another dot in that bioresonant field that other people far away from you in countries that are nowhere near ours will start downloading spontaneously, just like the 100th monkey effect works. So it's a process. It's not something that we can do overnight. The simple answer is, when you're not in here, there are certain things that you could do that are certain protocols. Number one is something like this. This is what Dr. Michael would call like the high-tech and the low-tech model. Basically taking, in this case, only scalar. You can't use the light on this, right? This is just using the scalar side of the equation and pretty much bringing a torsion field around with you to the best of your ability. So this doesn't go out 2.2 miles, this goes about 5 or 6 feet as a cocoon or a sphere around your body. So this can help you. But there are certain protocols that I want to speak about because they're very important to understand how to really benefit from this technology to like the greatest ability to make your time here worth it. Take one more sip of my water and we're going to dive into that. There we go. Okay.
Jason,
Yes.
I don't know if this is a good point for this question or not,
Yeah.
but what is it and what is its impact on us for all of the 5G boxes we see going up?
Transmutation as opposed to protection. So this doesn't protect you from anything, because to protect from something would mean to make that thing stronger. As opposed to protecting, you want to transmute. You take negative and you turn it into positive, just like this computer did. It took something negative that used to harm people and turned it into something positive. It's an alchemy, it's a transmutation, turning something from this to that. So you take incoherent fields and you turn them into coherent fields through creating a coherent field, AKA a torsion field. That's the short answer. But I want to explain the protocols and we'll go into all the other questions.
Why can't you put that many phones?
Because let's go back to what we just said. Back to what we just said is you have two parts to the equation. So you could take this and transmit it, but that's only light within the spectrum. You need light within the spectrum coupled with the torsion field that can only be created by identical electromagnetic fields fixed perfectly in a room. You can just,
So if millions of people will have it, they will create
no, because that's not perfectly aligned. You need them perfectly calibrated and perfectly aligned to create the merge point. So a lot of people ask me that. They say, why can't this just be released online and shared? Well, it could be. It's called EES System transmissions on my YouTube channel. But that's not going to give you the ultimate high approach and high impact of what you're looking for. It will, just like the torsion field will give you just the scalar balance, the light will give you just the light balance. But you want the balance on both sides of that equation. You want the balance on full holistic healing, which is within the matrix and outside of that, beyond the speed of light. Unfortunately, and it's not unfortunate, it's how it works, but if there was a way to create alignment with electromagnetic fields by distributing it to millions of people, that would be an awesome solution. But in the way that you create a torsion field, you can't do that. You need perfect alignment with the black box part that you can't just transmit over a screen. So your way would work 50% of what it's trying to do, just like standing 2 miles away from here would work for 50% of the equation, just on different purposes. Your way would work, which is what the YouTube thing is intended to do, which again, still it's a little tough because you're taking a camera to record that.
But then the monkey effect will take.
Say it again?
That the monkey effect will take, if it's only affect 25 or percent of people.
Correct, only within the spectrum.
Right.
You need on all levels of the spectrum. So can that help? Absolutely, that's why we put it on places like that. But to get the full effect of how this technology is supposed to work, you need both. But you still could use one over another and get great effects. Just like if you're standing 2 miles away from the center and you're not in it, you'll still get a great effect from the torsion field. But you're not going to get the full holistic effect of the torsion field and the light within the spectrum. So your way can still help a lot of people, which is why we do those things. But the way that this technology specifically works, you would need to. If there's somebody that could figure out a way to take the second part and make that remote, it would fix a lot of problems. I don't know of a way of how to do that yet. But maybe the next person that finds out will win the Nobel Prize. Let me know if you do. It would be a great invention.
Is this just one system then, or is this two?
What do you mean?
Like for each, so the way you said they all have to be fit perfectly. So for each system, how many screens are there? Is this just considered a one?
Anywhere from 4 to 24, and some people go bigger than that.
Okay, so
The more screens, the stronger that field. But to tell you the exact ratio of how much stronger, that would be a question for Dr. Michael.
So minimum 4.
Yeah.
Minimum 4.
Minimum 4. You could have a cube. A cube is something that you would bring, like I have 2 cubes stacked up on top of each other in my office. But the cubes have the screens facing outwards, not inwards. So you get everything that I just spoke about without the photonic collision on a weaker force. So it's still great. I wouldn't use the cube if you have like a serious, severe ailment. I would use the cube like I use it for preventative purposes along the way. It's like, think about it as a charger along the way. But I would never, like we don't work with centers that have cubes anymore because I don't support that. If you're gonna open up a center and bring this to people that are looking for something specifically, give them a strong field, don't give them a cube. Cube is for personal, on the way sort of purposes. So, okay. So protocols. What protocols do we need to know in order to enhance your experience before and after your experience in an energy enhancement system technology in a room with this technology? Number one, there are certain things that we all know that we should be doing regardless of whether you're using this technology or not. Meditation, going within, reflection, calming your nervous system, going into your parasympathetic nervous system, all those things are literally the opposite of stress. And stress is the #1 killer. So with or without that technology, do yourself a favor and do things like breath work. Do things like meditation. We know that high oxygen-rich environments render health as opposed to disease. Breath work can help you a lot with those things. Before, after, during, so long as you're not disrupting somebody in the room, all of those things can help a lot. But there are specific points when it comes to what to do after in terms of protocol for this technology and during in terms of your treatment as a whole to really experience the highest benefit. #1 is salt baths. Salt baths are extremely important because it's basically helping the body get rid of what it's trying to get rid of. It's completing a circuit. The best analogy I can give you is when you cough up phlegm. You don't want to swallow it back. You coughed it up to get it out of you. So the next thing you would do is spit it out. Well, the body doesn't have a mouth all over it. It has something called skin. And the skin has pores. It's like the mouth of the skin to get things out. Just like the spitting of that phlegm, to get rid of the toxins that are now loosening up in your body from what this technology does and helps you do to yourself. So after an hour, 2 hours, an overnight, whatever it may be, spending time in a salt bath is basically helping complete the circuit of getting rid of, through the pores of your skin, all the garbage that was loosened up. It's almost like you're getting shaked, right? You're going through this shaking process and all this garbage is starting to loosen up. You got to let it go. So the salt bath helps you let that go. But there's another really, really important part that comes to the idea of food. And what I'm about to share for some may be controversial, so I have to give a preface here and then I'll explain it. I was born and raised a vegan. I don't believe that veganism is right for everybody. I think everybody has their own way. I think everybody has their own body, and I think everybody has to listen to their body. With that being said, part of the protocol, especially for people that are more sick than others, is during the undergoing of this process with this technology, to remain as plant-based and vegan and even raw as possible, meaning not even cooking the food that you're eating, when it comes to plants, fruits, vegetables, herbs, nuts, and so on and so forth. Forget about what you think is right and what you think is wrong. Let's go away from there because that can be a controversial topic. Let's talk about science for a second and how energy moves through food so you understand why that is specifically a part of this technology and the protocol for this technology. We understand that the basis of all life as we know it in this matrix is what? Light. And the closest way to get to that light and sustenance of life is sunlight. Sunlight gives you absolutely everything when it comes to the sustenance of life on all forms, on all levels, and on all dimensions. So I'm going to draw a food pyramid here, starting with the sun. And the food pyramid is broken up into 4 different levels. Up here is your fruits, plants, vegetables, herbs, and nuts. Over here is your herbivores. Over here are your carnivores, and over here are your processed foods. Up here, this level, level 1, is called autotrophs. That's a scientific term that basically means that this level makes its own food. So plants, fruits, vegetables, herbs, nuts, they undergo something in their most core form called photosynthesis. They make their food through sun. They take sunlight, the essence of all life, and convert that sunlight into energy. Energy that can be used by who? By herbivores, because the job of herbivores, aka us to an extent, is to eat from level 1, which got its energy directly from the base of all life, which energetically speaking is a torsion field. The second or third level, I should say, is your carnivores. Carnivores are animals that eat other animals. Carnivores eat the herbivores, which got their energy from here, which got its energy from the sun. So in short, your herbivore gets its energy from the thing that got it from source, and your carnivore got its energy from this, which got its energy from this, which got its energy from this. In other words, it's a more diluted form of that torsion field, of that source. Forget just that, there's a nuance on this level. When you cook something past 118 degrees Fahrenheit, you also move further away from that source because it distorts the water in that thing. It distorts the torsion field in that thing. So what you eat, you become. If you eat from level 3, you'll still get sustenance, but you're going to get less sustenance than this one from what you're actually eating. Now, I know that that's controversial on the science and the nuances of it all, but when it comes to sunlight and the source of it all, you want to be as close to this as possible when you're trying to help your body heal itself. And if you eat from the foods that are as close to this as possible, that is your best chance of touching that so-called light, which is embodying that torsion field. Your processed foods, I'm not drawing an arrow because they don't eat anything. Your processed foods is basically taking level 1 and manipulating it to create a level 4 food. Beyond Meat, Impossible Meat, Doritos, and so on and so forth. So what these evil people in the world did, and they're very smart in the way that they did it, to give them credit for that even though they're psychopaths, is they took level 4 and disguised it as level 1 by calling Beyond Meat and Impossible Meat plant-based and vegan. But that's not what a vegan diet is. If you want to eat in a way when specifically going through this technology, if you're extremely sick and you want that higher probability of experiencing returning back to your birthright of health, the best chance that you can get at doing that is eating from the foods that are closest to that original divine toroidal field and torsion field. And that's why one of the protocols is during this process, when you're experiencing this technology, when you're trying to heal yourself from something specific, the more severe, the more it is recommended to stick to here or, at the worst, over here. It's not about good or bad, because again, there are some people who go vegan and get sick because it's not for everybody. So I want to acknowledge that for a second. Just because this pyramid is what it is in terms of how things work and how close something is to source in this way, we first have to understand that this level, this level, this level, and this level are all connected to source. There is nothing that's not connected to source. There are just further dilutions from that source energy in terms of what gives you true sustenance from the top of that pyramid. So what's going on when somebody goes from a carnivore diet to a vegan diet and doesn't feel good? It doesn't mean that the vegan diet is bad objectively. It means that it may not be good for them subjectively. Just like if I were to go and eat meat today, I wouldn't be able to digest it. Because from the food that you eat, that food is a very big part of creating your vibration of being. Your vibration of being can't change too quick, because if it does, you can hurt yourself. I'm going to give you an analogy, not a comparison, because I'm going to bring in drugs to the equation. So I don't want you guys to hear this as a comparison, but an analogy to understand a principle that I'm trying to express here. If you're addicted to cocaine, and you want to get off that addiction, and you stop overnight, if you've been doing that cocaine for a long time, you can kill yourself. You will literally die from withdrawals in some cases. Does that mean the cocaine is good? No. Does that mean that stopping the cocaine is bad? No. It just means that currently, because the cocaine helped you establish a certain vibration of being, switching out of that too soon can cause damage because you're trying to transition from point A to point B in a way that your body is not ready to handle that. So it's not about better or worse or good or bad. The first and most important thing is honoring your body. That means that I'm not telling you look at this pyramid and go to level 1 right now, because that may not be good for you. Understand this, become aware of this, and now that you're aware of this, great. Let nature take its course and move in the direction that you choose to go into. You could still be very healthy eating from here and here. There are a lot of people that are extremely healthy eating from here to here. If you eat from only here, I think we all know what happens there. But there are a lot of people that are very healthy on all levels. It's not just a matter of the outward expression of health. It's the inward expression of health that then ties to spirituality as well. When you want to get to this point, you have to eat from that point. Why? Because what's the difference between this, this, and this? Scientifically speaking, the water to matter ratio. In meat, you have about 70% water and 30% matter, whereas up here, you have about 97% water and 3% matter. Now, what happened over the past 10, 11, 12 years? Ever since 2012, there's been a really interesting energetic shift around the planet. Being born and raised a vegan, I know what it was like when I was a kid. I couldn't eat anywhere. Today, I could eat almost everywhere. Why? Because there was a shift in consciousness that then reflected a shift in demand that then caused for new markets to arise, because when there's demand, there are going to be people that come to give you that thing. So we see that as people are becoming more spiritually oriented, less dense, the food that they eat will reflect that. You're going to eat foods that are less dense because you desire what you're in resonance with. Again, this isn't about better or worse or good or bad. This is just the law of resonance. You experience what you're in resonance with, and you desire what you're in resonance with. There's a reason why over the past 10, 11, 12 years, the world has been changing to less dense foods. Unfortunately, There are certain people at the top that have convinced us that this is this in disguise, when it's not. And that's what we have to be careful from, because this will take us furthest from everything. But as we ascend as a collective, we see the food that we desire change. And we know the food that we desire changing because we see the demands in the markets that are coming out of it. It's a fact of reality right in front of us. So in short, when you're experiencing this technology, and you want, especially when you're experiencing huge disorder, imbalance in the body, things like water fasts, things like anything having to do with purging the body and bringing it back into its whole form by eating whole foods, because one is a reflection of the other, will bring you back closer to this, which will then give you a much higher chance and degree and probability of experience health over disease. So that's why that is part of the protocol, not because one is better or worse, but because scientifically and energetically speaking, one will bring you closer to the balance of creation, which is an embodiment of health as opposed to disease. So I just wanted to bring that out when it comes to the actual protocols as well, and understanding what to do before, what to do after, what to do during, because I want you, and all of us want you, to step out of this and not just experience something once or twice. The point is to take this energy with you, to your point. You take this energy with you, not just by this. Think of this as like a booster. It's your stepping stone along the way. Some of us need a stepping stone for a lot longer than others, right? We all have a different way that the body transitions itself. But there's so many tools that you have. This is one of them, and this is a great tool. But in conjunction with this tool, do things like meditation. Do things like breath work. Do things that are eating more alkaline foods. Do things that are more oxygenating to your body, like breath work, like spending time in the proper environments. Do things that will charge your cells by spending time in environments like this that will bring your cellular charge to a higher degree. And all of those things holistically in conjunction with each other will render not health over disease, but an environment that health can flourish over an environment that disease can't. That's the paradigm shift that we're starting to understand, of health does not exist out there. Health exists with the environment of the body that you're creating. So I hope that answers some of the questions with protocols. Yes, go for it.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
I embraced raw veganism for years. Didn't work for it. It didn't work for me. And although with my heart and soul I believe in it, and in a perfect world, if I didn't have adrenal issues, I'd still be one. Will I slow down my healing process?
No, as a matter of fact, you want to hear something cool? You know how homeopathic medicine works? You have to take the disease to cure the disease.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know your situation specifically, but the way that I was taught is there are certain foods that my teachers would call forbidden foods. And the interesting thing is when you eat forbidden foods, in some cases you'll need to use forbidden foods to heal from them. Just like homeopathic medicine. So I don't know your situation specifically. Maybe down the line, that could be something that you're moving into, but you have to deal with what you're going through now. And at the end of the day, all of us have eaten garbage throughout our lives. It's not all of us, all of us. I ate garbage yesterday. We all do it. It's a part of it. The question is in what ratio, right? It's a matter of doing everything in moderation. You still want to enjoy life. You don't want to be some monk that's like disconnected from reality. Like there's some chips that are good. You know, there's some things that taste good. So enjoy it. I do it all the time. But I do it in a ratio of about maybe 15 to 85. Yeah. 85 being the more upper levels. In my case, only this level because I don't eat meat. But that's just in my situation. So it's all about a balance in the way that you do things. So again, I don't know your specific, you know, your blood work and all that. But I can guarantee. No, I mean seeing the actual blood work and seeing all that. But so yeah, there are also doctors that they're experts in diets in alignment with blood types. So again, we're now living in a world where, let's say that your ancestors, and what's your background?
Irish.
There we go. There we go. I was going to say you're white, so you got to be from somewhere over there.
Like a Hindu.
But no, here's how it works. Your ancestors, by fact, over there, ate a lot of meat for a long, long time. That's what they knew. So you're now not just coming from the vibration of being of your own body. You're coming from the vibration of being of your ancestry as well. Somebody like you will have a much tougher time switching to veganism and feeling good than somebody that doesn't have your ancestry of that, not because it's good or bad, just because it's a different vibration of being. So in a case like yours, I wouldn't say go and switch, because your heart and soul can tell you whatever you want. You have to pay attention to the physical nature of your body, because that's what the food is giving you sustenance for. So I personally believe that I believe that there was one day where everybody did only eat fruits and vegetables. And there is one day where we will return back to that through ascension, because you're not going to be, you'll only eat what you're in resonance with. You're not going to eat something that's more dense than the density of your body. It's not going to make you feel good. It's actually going to make you sick. Like that's how it works with food and in general. So over a period of time, let's go to the past. To the past, human beings are not really meant to live in, I mean, even New York to an extent. They're not meant to live in those cold places. We're meant to live in places where you don't need fire to cook anything. We're meant to live in places that we can consume the food that we eat in its raw form. If you take meat, for example, in its raw form in Ireland, and in most places around the world, they had fire, they were hunters, and that's what they did. So they could do it, right? But there is no such thing as a species on this planet that cooks its food or even wants to eat that cooked food if they have a preference. They go through instinct and innate behavior, and their innate behavior, if you were to take a hungry lion, a hungry baby lion, and a hungry baby human, and you put an apple and a rabbit in front of it, the human baby that's hungry would go for the apple naturally before you taught it anything. And the human lion, and the baby lion would go and eat the rabbit because it has everything to deal with that in its raw form. It can take that fur and that skin in its raw form and go through it and do everything. If we did that, most of us would get very sick. So does that mean that we can't eat it? No, of course you can. We've been eating it for a very long time and everything's fine. But is that optimal in our base? By nature, no. Right now, because we've come out of our base so far, you can't go back to the base right away because we're not there right now. So it's an ascension process, and all of us have it, or I have it in different ways, right? We all have our own factors of what we're returning back to. For some people, it's food. For some people, it's things that they're dealing with their emotions. Everybody has their own thing that they're coming back to into balance. And if you try and go right back to it without, doing it gradually along the way, you can hurt yourself. So to somebody like you and what you just said, I would say keep eating that. You're obviously aware of the other side. And find your own balance. And finding your own balance doesn't mean that you get back to the base at the end of this life. That's not what I'm talking about either. I mean, you go gradually and you listen to your body, because that's the most important thing. If your body's telling you I'm weak when I'm only eating the fruits and the vegetables, don't do it, because that's not what your body wants. And it's a matter of honoring that and learning along the way while being aware of the base. And it's, it's a gradual process. Yeah.
Considering all of this information, if you aren't well, are there any recommendations for incorporating this into your life? I mean, the inclination is to want to move in and live here in this environment. So how many hours do you incorporate into your life? Do you build up on it?
That's a good question. Again, I can't give you a black and white answer, because there's no such thing as a true black or white answer, because every human body is different. So let's go back to the food for a second. Somebody would say, so is it right to be vegan? We just said it's not that simple, right? There's a lot of nuances there. So the simple answer I would give you is you have to listen to your body. You have to do your own testing, because your body will react differently and respond differently than my body. What I like doing always when somebody's sick is a 20-hour base. So you do let's say you're dealing with a tumor somewhere, okay, a breast cancer. Then you do a test of whatever you would do to test that breast cancer. Then you would do 20 hours. Longer periods of time is better. Like, let's put it like this. If you want to do 20 hours, it's better to do 5 hours 4 times than 2 hours 10 times, because you get to drop in more each time. And after that 20-hour base of, call that your calibration aspect or your calibration period, see what happened after that 20-hour base. For some, you're going to experience incredible results. And for some, you're going to experience very little results. Now the question is, why do you experience more than I would experience when you and I both have the same exact ailment? And that goes into another lesson that is extremely important. It's not as simple as just looking at the physical part of your body. There's two aspects to break it down simply. There's two dimensions of will. There's free will, and there's divine will. You come here to learn certain lessons. The way that this works is almost like those cars with two steering wheels. That's how you learn to drive. Not so much anymore, now you have the instructor, but you know what I'm talking about with those cars. So those cars with two steering wheels is exactly what you're driving through life right now. All of us, me, everybody in this room, and everybody outside of this building. You are sitting in both driver's seats. This is the perspective from the body, and this is the perspective from outside of the body. Some may call it the non-physical, the scalar, the soul, whatever you want to call it. Something that is faster than the body, that is then quantum, understands more than what we understand in our minds right here, right now. Meaning this is the canoe inside a river, being in the canoe, and this is being in the helicopter 1,000 feet up, seeing the canoe and the path ahead of it. So the way that you would do things from this point of view may change from the way that you do things from this point of view. When you come here to experience yourself as a human being, there's a veil. You call it the veil of forgetting, amnesia, whatever you want. And suddenly, you experience yourself only in this driver's seat, forgetting that there's another driver. This driver is your divine will, your purpose, your path, why you came here, the lessons you came here to experience, how you came here to evolve, and so on and so forth. But if you came here knowing that, there would be no point of coming here, because then you don't have free will. So this is what allows you to be a human being, to have free will. So now you're driving on this street, and the street is dictated by divine will, your purpose, your path, why you came here in the first place. Your free will, with the amnesia veil, is now driving on this street and basically starts veering away from the path, away from what divine will came here to do. Now on the side of the path, there's trees and spikes and very dangerous things. So what would you do from the driver's seat of divine will? You'd bring it right back onto the street. The further you veer with your free will off of the path of your divine will, the harder that jerk back onto the road is going to have to be. And the harder that jerk back onto the road is, the harder your head hits the window when it jerks you back. And if you forget about this and you're only over here, then you think you're a victim to it, because you don't understand why in the world did I hit my head. But when you understand both driver's seats, then suddenly you say thank you. Because if this didn't bring you back onto path, you would hit the trees and the spikes and the dangerous things and be no more. So every experience that we experience in the world today, and I'll answer your question in just a second, every experience that we experience in the world today that we call a negative experience, a hardship, whatever it may be, is an expression of divine will bringing itself back on course. When your head hits the windshield, that could be another word for cancer, or heart disease, or a staph infection in your leg, or a dislocated shoulder. It's trying to tell you something. The question is, are you aware that it's trying to tell you something? And if you're aware, can you figure out the lesson through your free will without it taking away the human experience from you? Because giving you all the answers would no longer make the human experience the human experience. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is there's two sides to you over here. There's the physical body, and there's your karmic cycle, the lessons you came here to experience. If you were to come in here and I were to come in here with the same exact ailment, and you walked out of here without that ailment anymore, and I'm still sitting here like, why do I still have it? Well, that's because I didn't learn the lesson. And if you don't learn the lesson, no technology will ever be able to help you, because you cannot circumvent and get around a spiritual lesson that something's trying to teach you. I don't care how powerful that technology is. So you need to acknowledge both free will and divine will. It's not enough to just come in here, sit, and say, okay, let's see what happens. When you have the pain in your knee or the pain in your lower back or the breast cancer or whatever it may be, those things are messages to help you, not to hurt you. How do we know that? Because in the field of all, there's one source. One of the laws of creation is the law of oneness. You can't actually separate anything from everything else. You can try to within the physical matrix, and you will perceive me and you. But me and you, in our essence, are not disconnected from each other. There is a field where you and I are connected. So in the law of oneness, and what that shows us, which is a law of the universe and a law of creation, if everything is one, just like you wouldn't take a hammer and break your own leg, source will never do anything to hurt itself. So when we forget that law, and when we operate without the awareness that there's a veil here that's not showing us divine will directly, because it would take away the human experience, we play victim. And we say, what do you mean? Why is this happening to me? It must be a bad God that gave me cancer. It must be a bad God that did this to my child. Because what type of God would do that? The type of you that's trying to bring you back on course. You need to learn lessons along the way. We all do. And every single time you have an ailment, a disease, a disorder, whatever it is, it's not a disorder. It's actually a higher form of order that we don't understand. So we call it a disorder. There's no such thing as disorder. There's such thing as order, and when we don't understand it, again, we call that disorder. So again, to summarize, the difference between me and you with the same ailment, you walk out without it, and I walk out with it, is the fact that I still have a lesson to learn. And if I don't understand why that knee pain is coming in, what it's trying to show me, then I could sit here all I want, and it's not going to help me. Because if a technology was ever able to do that, and no technology can do that, there's no such thing as something that could take away the base of all, which is the reason why you came here. You would take away your human experience. So if you want to catalyze your healing process in a room like this, it can't just be a physical thing. It needs to be physical and spiritual. It needs to be physical and non-physical. It needs to be vector and scalar. It needs to be all sides, holistic health of, okay, I experienced this pain in my knee, and I understand that there's a deeper root and a lesson that it's trying to show me. Learn the lesson, and the pain will go away. Now, this can help you learn the lesson, because this puts you in a state of coherency. This synchronizes the hemispheres of the brain. So when you synchronize right and left brain hemispheres, it's much easier to see things clear when you're in a state of coherence, as opposed to a state of distortion. And when you're in a state of coherence and you see things clear, then what happens? You're able to find that lesson a whole lot quicker. So it's kind of working together at the same time. But both have to be taken care of simultaneously. Yes?
No, I was just gonna say, thank you for that. That makes so much sense to me, because I lost my hearing in my 20s, and it got progressively worse through each time I've had a kid. And I literally, for probably 15 years since I learned about the law of attraction, have done manifesting and meditations and literally every holistic healing you can think of to get my hearing to come back. And when it wouldn't manifest and it was getting worse, I went into the victim mode. And then I started learning about Dolores Cannon. And I started listening to her work. And then I came to this level of acceptance. And I started to kind of learn the lessons behind it. And my right ear actually has improved 5 to 10 decibels over the past
Oh,
week.
wow.
So now, like, I do know, like, this, and I can actually hear you. Normally, I wouldn't even be able to attend stuff like this because I'm so profoundly deaf that, but it is definitely, like, improving.
Wow.
And something definitely shifted, but it wasn't, I think I got so caught up in, like, trying to force it to happen and wondered why this type of stuff doesn't heal me. And I think it really did play the divine will part. So I'm just really glad you share that, because that was the piece that I was always, like, stuck on. Like the victimization.
Yes. It's what most of the world is. We all go into it. But you know what's interesting?
It's easy to fall into it.
Very, very easy to fall into it. What's very interesting over here is when it comes into things that are not curable, I'll tell you why that doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing as something that's not curable. Just like there's no such thing as something that's impossible. There's such thing as we don't know how to do it, so we call it incurable or impossible. But the law of balance and harmony tells us if there's a disease, there's a cure. If there's a problem, there's a solution. If you can't find it, that's a whole other thing, but it exists. So you were once the merge of a sperm and an egg. And those came together and started developing all the things that you have on your body right now, all your senses. Your ears that allow you to hear, your eyes that allow you to see. So we've done it once, creating and producing something from no vision to vision. Then why is blindness incurable? If you've already created your own eyes, if you've already grew your own fingers, why can't you grow back another one? Of course you can. You've already done it. I'm not talking about something that is a theory. You've done it. When you developed from an embryo into a human baby, you've done it. So if you've done it once, you can do it again. We just don't know how to do that yet, but I promise you it's possible. As a matter of fact, in Tarpon Springs, Florida, I met somebody that had this whole part of his finger cut off. And his experience in the system had to grow back. I saw it. It's possible. How that works, I don't know. I also don't care because the nuances aren't important. What's important is that you did it once. So why would it be impossible to do it again? We've already proved that it was possible. So your hearing came as a lesson to show you something. Just like you developed your hearing from an embryo to a human baby, you can redevelop your hearing again, especially as a full-blown human being. You got everything you need within you to do that. Some of us, those lessons last for a whole lifetime. And that's not a bad thing. We experience it as a negative thing because it says, oh, well, this is a disability. You know, I can't hear so well. But no, because I promise you, I don't know your journey, but I know that that hearing probably brought you down an incredible path that caused you to read things and do things that you otherwise would have never done. Is that true?
Yeah. So I'm a life coach and a therapist, and I worked with people with substance abuse for 20 years, and it gave me the ability to empathize because it actually did some channeling and doing some automatic writing, and I asked about the hearing, and it said, your hearing will be returned once you complete your mission. And then I started to have this like realization that it allowed me to become so much more empathetic and connect with my clients on a soul-to-soul level. And then I realized like what people say out of their mouth is really not even, so I'm really not missing anything. It's the same. That's true. Like, it was like I had to get over this idea that I was missing something. And that was always like the big thing. And then once I worked through that, it just allowed me to have the experience. I'm actually really grateful for it. And once I was able to like truly, genuinely be grateful for my hearing loss and stop being like comparing myself like I'm missing out, that's when it actually started to like come back. And it is slowly like coming back.
It's awesome.
Slowly.
Keep
and
it
I
up.
didn't out my mind it would. It was just a matter of like when, and I was getting impatient with the process.
So
And I know it's for a reason.
you're able to be a testimony for also people that thought that you can't do that unless you undergo surgery, right? With that thing that they put on your skull. You could, and I hope you continue.
I'm deaf. When I meet people, I say I wear hearing aids because I don't want that in my identity. Because when I work with people with substance abuse, I would always say to them like, just say your name, because they come and there's a tendency to say I'm so and so, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, and subconsciously speaking,
You're keeping it in your field.
creates them, it keeps them stuck in that cycle.
I had a friend that kept doing that. I'm like, dude, stop saying I'm an addict. He's like, why? But I want to help people. I'm like, but you're destroying yourself. You did that, great. We've all done stuff. If I identified myself by my past, God forbid, it would be horrible. We all would, because we've all done stupid stuff. But you're not an addict. You experienced addiction in the past, and now you're a different person because we're moving, we're transmuting, we're evolving, we're ascending. So I like that you brought that up.
Like, I'll just say, like, I experienced hearing loss because it's not who I am. It's part of my journey. And so I think it gave me the ability to empathize with my clients who like to identify themselves with their whatever struggle they have. Because it's such a, I feel like it's detaching from that 3D identity and learning like who we really truly are as energetic beings. And the hearing loss really helped me to be able to do that. So I don't think there's anything, like I accept it now.
I remember I met somebody recently, and he goes, I'm 30 years sober. And my answer to him was, no, you're 30 years in the past, my friend. You're not 30 years sober. Because now you're just a human. And 30 years ago, you made a change. 30 years sober means you're still bringing that addiction mentality with you for the next 30 years, like you need to stop and move away. And so ever since, I spoke to him after, and he said, I'll never say that again.
They used to get mad at me because they said I overly, like the way, because I always went up against the grain for everything I ever did in life.
Yeah, same.
But my boss used to get mad because I would tell them, like, you don't have to put so much emphasis on your problem. The more you put emphasis on the problem, that's what you're going to continue to create.
100%.
And they're like, well, these people have an addiction, and when you tell them that, they don't focus on that, I'm like, but they just don't get it.
Yes.
I have always thought outside the box that way, but it's just been part of my journey. I don't know. So I completely agree with you. It's like where you focus, that's what grows. I mean, say sober, it's like,
Implications.
right.
Thank you for sharing. What time is it, by the way? So I know timing.
It's 10 of 7.
Like 7:10?
No, 10.
10 to 7. 10,
10
okay.
to 7.
10 to 7. Okay, I got about 20 minutes, and I'm going to have to run. Yes.
What about people who do not have a physical disease?
Mhm.
You wanna call it a mental or whatnot? Does this work, or how would that work? Because they don't even, a lot of times, recognize that they have something wrong. I mean, a person that has pain knows they have pain.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering how.
So let's break it down to 3 portions: physical ailment, mental ailment, and you're just optimal and great. Okay?
Just what?
And you're just optimal.
Okay.
No ailment. We all have something, but forget about that. Let's call it optimal. Okay? So physical, mental, optimal. Each one of those will always have a use to still want to be in a coherent field, right? Because optimal, you call it preventative. Physical and mental, you call it alleviation, getting to the point of preventative. That's how the medical industry doesn't work. They don't want to prevent, they deal with things when they come up. It's a great moneymaker. It's a beautiful thing for their pockets, but it hurts a lot of people. So in short, for anything having to do with mental, people ask, okay, does this help depression or anxiety or whatever it is? Every physical thing has an energetic root. I'm using the word energetic and not spiritual on purpose, because I want to reach a wider, I'm just used to doing that. Because the second you say spiritual, people look at you like a yogi. So every physical thing, I need to speak in a certain way to reach those people. So every physical thing by scientific law has an energetic root. There's an energy that created that physical thing. That's the essence of that physical thing. So just like balance, take with this system, occurs and helps balance the environment of physical ailments, it would do the same thing with emotional ailments or emotional imbalances or whatever it may be. Because all it's really doing is creating an energetic, coherent field. It's a coherent, energetic field, that torsion field.
Somebody was like unaware, and somebody else brought them here.
Mm-hmm.
And so they weren't here of their own volition because they don't know any better or something, would it still work?
Here's how I know it does. When I first started this, I was extremely skeptical. I'll tell you what got me. When it first started, it was my aunt. My aunt had a 12.5 centimeter cystic fibroid in her uterus. She went in 4 hours later, came back to herself. I was in shock, but I said, maybe it's the placebo effect. If you pay attention also to the way that I explain things, I need a lot of physical, tangible something. I wanted to know that this is not just some nonsense and there's something objective to it beyond the subjective reality of the power of thought. What got me was when my sister's dog had a tumor that dissolved in 3 days, because that dog did not go in because of his own volition. He had no clue what we were doing. We brought him in, put him in for 3 nights. He slept there for 3 nights in a row with my aunt, and 3 nights later, his 4 centimeter tumor in his neck was gone. There is no placebo effect there. You don't have that with animals. So that's what got me very interested, and that's what brought me to the next level of, let me look deeper into this. And I was still skeptical, and I went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the science. And today, it's just science. But about a year ago, before I started this publicly, I didn't believe it. Just so we're all on the same page. I said, this can't be, there's no way. It doesn't work like that. And then over a year, my awareness of science expanded. And then the way that I looked at this changed, because it makes sense, because there's science behind it. I just didn't know the science. So I called it nonsensical, woo-woo, because it was nonsensical to me because I didn't have that sense until I got that sense. That's how science works. 100 years ago, if I told you that I could take one black box and transmute sound to another black box and then amplify that sound through the air, you would call me a psychopath. Today we call it Bluetooth. So science never changed. What changed was our awareness of how it works. It's us that need to change in order to see things differently. What was impossible 100 years ago is possible today, and what's impossible today will be possible in 100 years from now. It's just a matter of us expanding our awareness to seeing what we used to call disorder and reshaping our perspective of disorder as really something that we just don't understand the order of. And as awareness expands, we understand more order. Cool. Yes.
Bring them.
My question is, you said these were calibrated, and is this the total system, or is there sound with it also?
No, this is the total system.
And if it is calibrated, are we experiencing that healing presence
Right now.
presently? Yes.
Absolutely. Right now.
So this detox that I'm feeling right now.
If you're feeling it, you're a highly,
I told you I'm sensitive.
Yeah, you're a
And I
sensitive
have
person, I was
very
gonna say.
open detox channels.
mhm.
As soon as I walked in, I
It's right
That's
behind
awesome.
you. That's
So
okay.
yeah, there are people that are more sensitive than others that are able to feel things differently. Personally, I'm always around it. I don't know the difference anymore. Like I'm here every day in a different one. And if I'm not in a center, I have it in my office. So it's become my normal thing. I honestly think that's the only reason why I'm able to output as much as I output. I don't know how I don't know. It's a lot of energy that's being output. And like, I'm bald and I'm 25. So it's a lot of energy that's being output, but I'm good. And I truly, like when I started this tour, I was very worried. I said, listen, I'm traveling a lot. You hear my voice, you know? I'm traveling a lot. I'm gonna be moving a lot. I'm gonna be meeting a lot of people. Can I do this many in one shot? And it's been pretty awesome. And it's pretty cool because it just so happens to be that the venues that are being used to speak in have this. So it's like a perfect thing along the way. And I really, this one, I'll just speak about my feeling. I give that a lot of credit to why I was able to get through the whole tour. It's awesome.
So we're getting a 2-hour treatment.
You're getting a 2-hour treatment right now, and you should definitely do, especially with what you're feeling, something like a salt bath when you get home. 100%. Yeah.
When you say salt bath, Epsom salt?
No, anything but Epsom salt or fake salt.
We have Epsom.
You have the salt. Can you bring it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you say not Epsom?
Epsom salt is, from what I've learned, basically like it. There's something to do with magnesium or something like that. Yes. Okay. I'm trying to remember the lesson that I was given on it. But basically, Epsom salt will take in a lot of the things in your water as well. So in your water, you have a lot of, especially like in your baths, you have a lot of fluoride and chlorine and all that. So it will cause you to suck in all that garbage as well. Epsom salt is not bad. It's just not a good use for what we're trying to do because of the environment that we're in. This, yeah.
Celtic sea salt?
Yes, Celtic sea salt, Himalayan salt,
So in a bathtub, if you have Celtic sea salt, how much would you put in?
about half of this.
Okay.
Yeah, this can be,
2 baths.
yeah, this can be about 2, right? About 2 of these. Yeah.
Do you believe that your body holds pain in different ways? You create pain by holding on to resentment.
Of course.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people, I don't think, and I don't understand it.
I'm listening.
Sometimes when you hold resentment, but you stay quiet and you don't say anything, or you and you bury it, but can it come out in your body into one?
Yes.
Of course.
Our bodies are amazing.
Well, I know, and I really do believe we're made to heal ourselves. It's like,
I think it's, if you're not conscious that you are holding it in, that's where this ease comes from.
and that's what, and I have to tell you, this is crazy, but like today I experienced something very different. I felt it today, I let myself go in there mentally. I said, all right, I believe in angels. I believe I'm so good. I said, I need to release what I'm holding inside me. I might not know what I'm holding inside of me, but I'm holding something. We all do, resentment of some sort. Or
It's how we stay safe.
like
If you deal with it and if you can't get rid of it, you just push it sort of behind you where you don't have to look at it and it just builds up and it creates.
The way that whole thing works is through these 3 states that are the same thing in a different way. So the difference between the thought of this Sharpie, the speech or the words of this Sharpie, and the physical matter of this Sharpie is none but a change in frequency. So this Sharpie exists as a thought, this Sharpie exists as a word, and this Sharpie exists as physical matter. It's almost like different states of water. You have gas, you have liquid, and you have solid. What's the difference between the different states? It's all the same thing expressed in different ways. The same spectrum, or the same element, in this case water, and the difference between gas, liquid, and solid is the distance of the molecules from each other. So gas, much more distance, much more space in between. Liquid, much closer. Solid, much closer. So it's about less dense to more dense, and that's what thought manifests and how it manifests into matter. So that's why I always say your physical diseases all have a spiritual or a non-physical root, because that's how it works. And anything from the good things in your life to the negative things in your life, and I'm doing that on purpose because I don't believe in the second one, but the good things in your life and the negative things in your life all start over here. They go into then speech, many cases that we're unconscious of in how we're speaking, and that then brings it into matter. It's taking energy and making it more dense through these different states. If you pay attention, I'm not religious in any way, but it's interesting that the Bible starts with speaking something into form, because it took the thought and it took the middle ground between the thought and the matter, which is your speech, and that manifests it into physical matter. So when you're trying to overcome cancer, everybody only pays attention to the cancer, and everybody forgets about the words and the emotions and the thoughts that brought that manifestation into being. We need to pay attention to all three parts of this holistic spectrum, as opposed to just this part. And if we do that, instead of saying, how do I fight the cancer? That's not what you should be doing. You don't fight cancer. What you do is you find the root of it, you learn the lesson, and you dissolve it from the base. Almost like if there's a tree with a poisonous seed, and let's make those branches just sticking out for practical purposes of this explanation. And those are the roots, and here's your seed. And I do that because it's a poisonous seed. And the seed sprouts into roots and a trunk and a canopy and branches and a canopy and so on and so forth. What we're doing is basically this is your thought, sorry that I'm writing it this way, thought and emotional stance. That's funny. Okay, this is your thought and emotion. Then your trunk is your word, and your branch is your matter. If you still have the poisonous seed, what we're doing right now is saying, okay, forget about the seed because we forgot about that. Let's just pay attention to the tumor, the branch, the matter. You can get rid of the tumor all you want with chemo and radiation surgery, and there are consequences to that, but it works sometimes. But that doesn't actually do anything because this seed is still poisonous. So there's an illusion of cutting off the branch and saying it's gone. But what we really know is going to happen to that tree is a new branch that looks a little different is going to grow, and it's still going to have that poison because it's still coming in. So it's not about fighting the matter. It's about changing the words, the expression that turns thought into matter. And you do that by changing the thoughts and the emotions that cause those things in the first place. So resentment, fear of letting go, things like that are the base of some diseases. And that manifests through that spectrum from thought to words to matter. In that way, from least dense to most dense, from non-physical to physical. It's all one and the same thing. The energy that you're tuning into is just manifesting into a more physical experience of that energy. All disease starts as an emotion or a thought. It's an energetic root that then shoots out into a physical expression. Yes, yeah.
May I take a picture of your 5D, 3D diagram?
Sure. I actually have a video that's going to be coming out, so you'll be able to watch that multiple times and see all of that clearly. Well, let's find this, 1 second. We drew a lot here. Yeah, just 1 second. We'll go, I think it's in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's at the beginning, yeah.
But that's an ugly one. Okay, you know what? Let me do you one better. Let me just draw it in 2 seconds.
Thank you.
We're just doing it on meat now. Jason, when's the video coming out?
Probably in the next 2 or 3 days.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Scalar vector.
Is it the presentation you did today, or?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
You sound really familiar.
Yeah, we'll post it on our website too, so that,
It's going to be everywhere.
yeah, everyone's gonna be watching it. I'm gonna be sending to everybody I know.
Yeah, it's a little more understandable than before.
Yeah, and it takes some of that mystery out too.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want mystery. We want to understand.
Exactly.
And science is like,
You
the
did a
average
great
person
job of
wants to know
explaining
the
it.
science.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Everybody can understand.
Okay, we'll do 2 more questions. We'll go to you and then last to you, okay? Awesome.
Real quickly, if the source of something is like the cancer that's hereditary, how does that tree model work? Because you can't really get rid of your hereditary genes.
Of course you can. Your hereditary is still focusing on the physical. If you're the worst card in poker, Texas Hold'em, the worst pair of cards is a 7 and a 2. And somebody won the World Series with a 7 and a 2. Just because you're dealt cards doesn't mean you can't play them well. So you can be prone to certain things. It doesn't mean you have to experience those certain things. Your DNA doesn't dictate your future. Your DNA dictates a potential future. And it's up to you to be able to change that. So if you align with the mental thought and emotions, that less dense form of energy of, oh, my mom had breast cancer, so I must have breast cancer. Or, oh, I come from the line or the group of Ashkenazi Jewish women, so I'm probably going to have breast cancer because they have a high rate of that in their genes with certain markers, then your chances of manifesting that are a whole lot stronger, not because of the genes, but because of the thought that you're resonating with that then turns into the word, which expresses your belief and then gives you the physical expression of that. You're in complete control, not your genes. Your genes definitely play a role. Your DNA definitely plays a role. But your DNA is not just one fold, your DNA is twofold. You have physical DNA, and then you have non-physical DNA. It's called light. You're still a part of that whole thing. We've only been focusing on the physical part, so we say, we're screwed because we have these markers, and we're great because we have these markers. That's free will. There's still the divine will level, the non-physical level of DNA. You choose how you play your cards. Your cards don't play you, unless you let them.
Plus what you were saying about environment too. There were all kinds of medical studies about identical twins that were separated at birth, had the same genes to get the same diseases, the same mental illnesses.
And one did and one didn't.
One did, one didn't.
That's very
Why?
cool.
You know, it's the different environments, the way they live their life.
Yeah.
Same thing with, you know, murderers that have, they found there's a genetic trait, and therefore, doesn't mean you're gonna be, just because you have it. It's whether you nurture it through your environment and the way you live your life.
And just like those murderers, people that don't have any of those markers can choose to be murderers.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And people that don't have the hereditary thing for cancer can still get cancer.
Right.
So it's not as simple as the genes and your lineage, yes.
So do your badge balls come to life if you keep thinking about them?
Absolutely. Because the more you, as we said over here, the more you focus, whatever you focus here, the more energy you give it over here, the more probability you give it over here, and especially over here to manifest. It's all a matter of your thoughts and your emotions being an expression of the program of your mind. We all have a program that we work according to. Just like computer languages have different programs, we have programs like joy, depression, love, anxiety, whatever it may be. The program that you are tuned to is the program you're going to experience, because that's how it works. So you can change the program. How do you change the program? Through this. don't focus. It's hard because the question I ask myself is, okay, we know this. How do we change the program? To change the program, you first have to understand what the program is made of. To understand what the program is made of, you have to use the very tool that you've been given that projects or reflects the program of your mind. And those are your words. So the more that you can pay attention to the words that come out of your mouth, your words are like a magnifying glass to look at the program of your mind that's made up of thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and things like that. And if you can change the words, and there's a whole science behind that. I wrote a book about it called The Language of Energy. If you can change your words and speak in a conscious way, then what happens is words hold energy. The more you speak something and repeat that thing over and over again, the more that energy will imprint the program of your mind, thus changing your emotions, your beliefs, and things like that. And over time, as these change, if your thought and your emotions are the program of your mind, and the program of your mind is a reflection of your life, then you imprint on your thoughts and your emotions to be more productive, and the reflection of that, which is your life, your external life, will be one that you want to live as opposed to one that you think you're a victim to. That's the short version of that whole book.
And can I paraphrase? I don't remember the author.
Yeah.
It is not mine.
Okay.
But your thoughts.
It's not his either, don't worry.
Your intentions become your focus, and your focus becomes your reality.
Absolutely.
It's called spelling.
Yes,
Right?
yes. Spelling, if you think of the word itself, you can through certain words, they've created a negative connotation on it because people have used that to manipulate people in negative ways. But I'll give you a perfect example. When I did that interview with Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, I was asked by TLS to use certain words. And they said you have to find a way to get Sandra to say the word miracle as much as you can. That's a positive spell. That's a positive form of instilling something within people subconsciously as they're listening to it. And look what happened. It was the biggest interview that I've ever done. So it's a form of using manipulation in a positive way. Tony Robbins does that to help people heal through neuro-linguistic programming. Now you can use that in marketing to brainwash people, and you can use that in healing to unprogram people. It's all a matter of who is the operator behind the technology. You could do it in negative ways, you could do it in positive ways. It's up to you. We'll do one more question. Let's go to you because we didn't go to you yet. Yes.
What about watching sad movies or violent movies? Is it going to cause any health problems?
That's a good question. I guess technically you can argue that, but enjoy, you know?
Put it in.
Yeah, enjoy, you know, like.
You'll think about the movie after watching it.
That's true. And there are a lot of sad movies that taught me a lot of good lessons. And there are a lot of action movies that helped me get rid of something that I otherwise would have wanted to punch somebody in the face over. So it's like, you know, I think that technically you could say that, but I think if you're aware of how certain things work, then you render those things less powerful over you. So enjoy the movies. Movies that I don't like are horror movies because they scare me. I don't like the feeling. But there are some people that love them, and they love them for a reason. My brother-in-law and my cousin Maya love the scariest movies in the world. They're made, them two are made differently than I am. And they get some sort of release when they watch it that I don't. You know, so I don't think it's, yeah, it stresses me. I'm like this. I have to come to this afterwards. But it's technically, I guess you could say so, but I personally wouldn't go too deep into that. Maybe when it comes to children, I would do things a little differently because they don't have the awareness that we're speaking of. But if you have the awareness, those things hold a little less power over you because you're no longer a slave to them. All righty. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you very much.
Elsie, I have been coming to you probably for about a week and a half now. I bought a nice package coming in for 2-hour sessions at a time. Horrible lower back, right hip pain, knee pain. Today, when I came in for 2 hours, I moved up in the chair position. I felt a lower pop in my back. And I have barely been in pain since the session today. And it's just great because normally I walk with a horrible limp, which you've seen me, And today I just feel like I'm standing straighter and not in as much pain as I've been. So I've been in chronic pain probably for about 5 or 6 years, just from beating my body up. And with age, it gets worse. And this has definitely helped with my pain and tolerance for getting up and moving around. So I'm really happy, and I'm excited to do many more.